Oh my goodness, I'm still in work clothes. Ew. Hello my beauties, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, hi, my name's Janelle, and if you're not new here, hi, my name's still Janelle. Thank you for being here. So today I have for you guys some of my all-time favorite books that I'm going to be discussing with you guys today. I have 10 of them. I'm going to try and talk briefly about them. These are just kind of books that I'm like, you should read these. They're pretty good. You might like them. Here you go. We're gonna get into it shortly. Before we do that, if you are not subscribed, make sure to hit the big red button below this video. It says subscribe on it. Duh. And I would really appreciate it if you subscribed. We have a really fun time over here. I do all kinds of bookish content, and if there's anything specific you're wanting to see from me, please comment it down below because I am more than happy to make videos that you guys also enjoy. Oh, one other thing, I am filming this on my phone, so if the quality is different, I do apologize. I'm just in too much of a rush to get my camera out because I do have to leave my house in like 30 minutes. So I'm hoping that I can get this filmed and, you know, go do what I gotta do. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get into the books. So I'm gonna be talking briefly about each book. I'm not going to go into a whole synopsis and detail about the books because obviously I've read them and I don't wanna give anything away, which sometimes I tend to do. So book number 1, these are in no particular order. This is not least favorite to most favorite, nothing like that. But book number 1 is The Final Girl Support Group by Grady Hendrix. I personally loved this book. It was so intense and it made me so anxious while reading it, which was the point of the book. But this is essentially us following, I believe there's 6 of them. But if you've seen any of the old horror slasher movies, it's all those final girls, so the girls at the end of the movie that have always survived to tell the story. It is a story about them and their support group that they're going to because of all the trauma that they've gone through, and they are in this group, and somebody is now targeting the final girls and trying to kill them one by one. So it's really good. If you like thriller, horror, slasher stuff, you would really enjoy this. It's not as graphic, I feel like, as I expected it, which was kind of nice because the chair on here says it's pretty graphic, but it really wasn't for me personally. But yeah, so this is definitely one of my favorites, and because it's one of my favorites, I highly recommend it. You should read it. It was a 5-star read for me. Okay, next up is another very highly rated book. Not all of these are 5 stars, by the way. Some of them are 4, some of them are 4.5, but they're also like some of my most loved books. So I should probably add that as well. But book number 2 is The Maidens by Alex Michaelides. So this I absolutely enjoyed. This is another like psychological thriller kind of book. I personally love thrillers, so I read a little bit of them. But this was so good. So I personally haven't read The Silent Patient, which is also written by Alex Michaelides, but I've heard great things about it and I really am excited to read it. But I read this and it was so good. It's essentially about a girl, what is her name? Mariana, okay, and Mariana is a college student and she is certain that her professor is a murderer, that he is this serial killer that is killing women across her campus. And this is on here because he is a teacher in Greek mythology, so there's a lot of like Greek mythology mixed into this. The methods of killing are like parallel to like a Greek thing. I don't really know how to describe it, but this one was so good. It kept me on my toes the whole book, and I really enjoyed this. So I highly recommend that you read this too. Okay, next up we have one that I literally just finished about 30 minutes ago. No, not even, like 20 minutes ago. So it was added to this pile, but it is Survive the Night by Riley Sager. So this one I absolutely adore. I had so much fun reading this. Riley Sager is easily becoming one of my most favorite authors of all time. I mean, I am just so blown away by his writing, and it's always such a good time. And this is essentially about a girl named Charlie that we are following, and there is a killer on the loose called the Campus Killer, and he has killed her best friend, and she needs to get home for Thanksgiving, and she ends up taking a ride with this stranger named Josh that she meets, and things, you know, she starts to get a little suspicious because things start to not line up, and obviously there's a killer on the loose, and so she is convinced that Josh is the Campus Killer and that she is in inevitable danger. I 100% recommend this one because just when you think you know what's going on, you don't. You just don't. It just changes again, and you're like, I don't know. I had so much fun with this. I finished this in less than a day. I couldn't put this down. It was absolutely amazing, and this is Riley Sager's newest release, so yes, read it. It's so good. Okay, so next up, we have yet another thriller. I do really like thrillers. I promise these are not all thrillers. I just happen to have all of the thrillers stacked at the top somehow. So if you don't like thrillers, just sit tight. We're getting to some fantasy and all kinds of stuff, so just wait a second. But fourth book that I really love and want to recommend is The Wife Upstairs by Rachel Hawkins. This one I read, I think, in January, and really loved this. I read the synopsis and I was like, okay, you know, Eddie, Jane, okay, you know, Eddie and Jane meet, and Eddie has just, you know, suffered the loss of his wife, and, you know, he's just kind of down in the dumps, and he meets Jane, and, you know, he sweeps Jane off her feet and all this stuff, and then his wife, you know, kind of is like coming back to haunt her, you know, like, what are you doing in my house? Hence, The Wife Upstairs. Well, at about page 30, the entirety of this book just changes. And you're like, oh, that changes everything about the story. It seriously blew me away. I was reading it on my couch when I lived with my parents, and as soon as it happened, I literally screamed, and my mom was like, oh my gosh, are you okay? And I was like, no mom, I'm not okay. Like, what? Oh my gosh, it was so good. I want to get back to this. It was like the best twist in this story. It was so good. So I recommend this one too. It's a good one. It's a great one. Okay, and the last thriller that I have, the last one, okay? Last one, you guys are not gonna be surprised by this at all, but it is Home Before Dark by Riley Sager. Again, we got 2 Riley Sager novels in here. I really like Riley Sager, guys. But Home Before Dark is basically about this girl that we're following, Maggie. We're following Maggie, and she has this traumatic, you know, experience as a child in this haunted house, and, you know, her dad writes a book about it, and, you know, they get famous for this thing. Well, eventually she goes back to this house, and she starts to experience some of the things that were written in her dad's book that she thought was fake. She thought he made it up. And, you know, you just start to learn things about Maggie and her family and this house. And I'm telling you, by the end of this book, you're going to be questioning whether the house is really haunted or not. I mean, seriously, I was like, I finished it, and then I was explaining it to my husband, Jonathan, and I was like, yeah, I just read this, and it was so good, and I'm explaining what happened, and he's like, so, is the house haunted? And I'm like, I don't know. I really don't know. Like, it left me in a place where I was like, maybe? I don't know. It is so good, but it's because it's Riley Sager, that's why it's so good. But yes, so this was amazing. I highly recommend this one. This one had me scared out of my mind like the whole time I was reading it, because we're getting like inserts from the book that her father wrote of this haunted house. So now we're like reading about it. Oh my gosh, it's so scary. I could not read it at home by myself. I was freaking out, but that was obviously the point of this book, and it did such a great job, and so I highly recommend it. Next up, I have not a thriller, and it is The Lost Apothecary by Sarah Penner. This one was one of my most anticipated releases of 2021, and it did not disappoint me at all. This one was just such a cute story, I felt like, and it also was like action-packed and intense, I feel like, which is always fun. So this book does a lot of flashbacks. We're flashing back between Nella, who is a like a poison lady, you know, like she made the poisons 200 years ago, and then we're also flashing forward to present day Caroline, who stumbles upon a little bottle like this that creates this mystery of what really happened with this apothecary, because there were some suspicious murders that were happening 200 years ago where people were dying, you know, these apothecary murders. And Caroline finds one of these bottles and she goes into her own investigation to find out what really was going on with all of these murders. And it's just really, really good. It may even classify as like historical fiction, maybe? I don't actually know. I don't know the specific genre of this. I just know that I was waiting for it to come out, and it came out and I read it and I loved it. And I don't regret any part of it. It was so amazing, and I had an absolute blast with this. My cousin even read it and she loved it, and it was just a really, really good time. So I highly recommend this one as well if you like, you know, some plot twists, because it has a lot of them. Okay, and next up we have a book that is no surprise to you guys. It's one of my favorites because I have talked about it before, and that is Serpent and Dub by Shelby Mahurin. So this is my paperback copy that has been tabbed because my cousin is currently reading my, you know, hardcover copy. But this I absolutely love. This is a book about a witch named Lou and a witch hunter named Reed that are forced into marriage in order to save Lou's behind, because she decided she was going to be a thief, and the only way for her to not go to jail is to marry this witch hunter. And she knows that he's a witch hunter, but he does not know that she is a witch. And so it's this whole thing, and there is some romance going on in here, and just there's all kinds of just absolute love that I have for Lou and Reed. I have a Lou and Reed mug. My husband has read this book and it is now one of his favorite books. I just absolutely love this book. As you can see, I have the second one up there, right there. Yep. I have the second one and I am about to purchase the third one. I thought I pre-ordered it, but I guess I didn't. So I am going to be purchasing it because I just love this series. I love these characters. It is an absolute blast. So I highly, highly recommend this one as well. Next up, we have one that I think I read in February-ish. I don't know. I really don't remember when I read some of these books, but I absolutely loved this book, and it is These Violent Delights by Chloe Gong. This was such a fun retelling. This is a retelling of Romeo and Juliet set in Shanghai, and so there's a lot of like cultural differences obviously than from the original one, which I super enjoyed. And there is just kind of a whole plot twist in the story because there's these so essentially I just had to look at the synopsis before I say something that may spoil the book that maybe we don't find out till later. I don't remember, but it's essentially the Romeo and Juliet, which is Juliet and Roma. I don't know why that was so hard for me to remember, but their families are basically, you know, feuding, whatever, your typical Romeo and Juliet. Well, when people start clawing their own throats out, yeah, it's intense, it's a little scary. But essentially, things start to go badly. And of course, one family is blaming the other family is blaming the other, you know, drama. So essentially it ends with people being suspicious that the monster of this city is back again, and they, you know, are coming for them. And I don't even know how to describe this. I really don't know how to describe this. I'm doing a terrible job, but just know that it is amazing. And if you haven't read it, you should read it. It is so good. I mean, chef's kiss. I had such a good time, and I even pre-ordered a special edition of, I think it's Our Violent Ends, which is the second one. So very excited about that. So read it, do it. And number 9, we have, not a surprise at all, Kingdom of the Wicked by Carrie Maniscalco. I will never ever stop talking about how much I love this book, because this book actually is what got me back into reading. So I'm hesitant to do recommendation videos because I just recently got back into reading in November of 2020, and I didn't read for a few years like before that. So I hadn't done much reading up until November of 2020, and so this book was the reason that I got back into reading. I had kind of delved back into the book community and saw this at a secondhand bookstore, and I was like, oh, they talk about that, you know, on Instagram, I'll go ahead and purchase it. And purchased it, read it, and I was like, where has this been all my life? I mean, it was absolutely amazing. It is essentially about a girl named Amelia and her twin sister Victoria, who is brutally murdered. And Amelia, in the process of trying to find out who murdered her sister, accidentally summons a prince of hell named Wrath. And things go a little, you know, crazy. And it was such a good time. This is another one that I have pre-ordered a special edition of Kingdom of the Cursed, which is the second one that comes out in October. And I am so stoked for it. I mean, I am so excited. So I'll never stop talking about this book. It is so good. Pick it up, read it, you'll love it. And lastly, we have a new favorite of mine and an unexpected favorite of mine, and that is Skyward by Brandon Sanderson. I have tabbed this thing. I absolutely love this book. I am not usually a sci-fi reader. That's usually not the genre that I am drawn to, but this I actually bought for my husband, and it ended up getting on my TBR, and I wasn't that excited about reading it, and then as soon as I started reading it, it is like no other sci-fi I've ever read in my entire life. I am in love with Spensa. It was such a good time. This is essentially about a girl named Spensa, and she, her father was a pilot for this, you know, their world that, you know, they're in, and he dies and is labeled as a coward. And so she has to now live her life as the coward's daughter, and obviously that comes with repercussions. She's not treated as equal, and all she wants to do is be a pilot just like her father, and she's also trying to prove her father's innocence, just basically trying to prove that, you know, her father is not a coward. And I just had such a good time with this. It was there was just moments in here where it like almost brought me to tears, and there was just so much emotion that was caught up in this whole book, and it just made me love it all that more. So yes, this one I also recommend reading. Even if you don't like sci-fi, you probably would like this, because I don't like sci-fi and I loved this. So just give it a try, Okay, so that is all of the books that I have for you guys that are some of my favorites, and also books that I highly, highly recommend that you guys read. I had such a good time reading each and every one of these books. Yeah, so I really, really hope you guys enjoyed this video. I hope that you are feeling, you know, inspired to read one of these books, because I would love to hear you guys' thoughts. If you have read some of these books, please comment down below which of these you also loved, or maybe you didn't like as much. I also would like to know that. I love to chat with you guys in the comments, so don't hesitate just to send something in there. But yeah, I really, really hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I will see you in the next one.